A while back, I was staying with my dear friend Ashok, and I was waking up early in the morning. I heard my goddaughter yell to her sister, Anna. She yelled, "Anna, get Maya Bear. She's in the playroom." And as I was waking up, I was thinking, my God, these kids have a playroom. They got this room dedicated to play. They make up games in here. They make up stuff in the moment. You know, they fight over toys in this space. And it got me thinking, you know, raise your hand. Did you play as a kid? Raise your hand if you played as a kid. Oh, yeah, almost everybody in this room played in some way, shape, or form. You had a room you played in. Maybe it was recess with friends. You name it. Like, we played like it was our jobs. Like 9 to 5, I've got to play. I've got recess at 3. We lived in that space. Myself, I used to play in the cupboard. As a little kid, you'd find me in the cupboard saving the galaxy from all kinds of aliens. In a world full of crime, I was the one in the cupboard solving the crimes. You know, but something happens when we become adults. If you think about it, play takes a back seat to the rest of our lives in some way, shape, or form. We still do it. Some of us still carve out some time, but we crave more of it. Or sometimes we don't have any time for that. And instead, we're looking for that certainty and that control to help us in our lives. We've got these obligations we got to do, take care of. And I see that energy when people bring it into my classrooms. You'll see it. It's kind of like really type A energy, nervous. They got to get it right. They got to do it right. They got to control it. It's almost like in those moments, our creative spirits take a little bit of a beating. And what will happen is, what I love about it is finally folks will kind of begin to let that go a little bit. They walk into the room. They'll come into the room to do something down in my improv space, and to do something they do all the time. All of you do all the time. Improvise. You think about it. Mick Napier, one of my teachers, calls it improvisation. He simply says, improvisation is getting up, not knowing what you're going to do or say, not knowing where you're going to go with it, and being completely okay with it. And I have folks that walk into my room, age 18 to 80. They'll come in. Maybe a partner got it for them as a gift. Maybe they want to be better, faster on their feet. Maybe they want to be better public speakers. And they'll start to kind of do this thing. They'll improvise. And in that moment, what happens to them is, at first, they're trying to kind of figure it out, get it all right. And then, literally, something happens. They begin to run toward the uncertainty. They begin to relish not knowing exactly what is coming next. They embrace the fear. And it's literally like they start to laugh, and when I see it, it's like ice. The metaphor is ice falling off their shoulders. And I'm immediately taken to the movie Hook. I don't know if anybody remembers this movie, but in this movie, there's an adult Robin Williams character. And he plays Peter Pan, but he's besieged by work. He's overwhelmed. His creative spirit is just kicked. And he finds himself back in Neverland because Hook has stolen his kids. And the Lost Boys are trying to help him. They're trying to help him remain and remind him that he's Peter Pan. And they're trying to do stuff with him, and he can't quite get there until finally one moment, he's sitting with his legs just sitting down, and a little boy named Pockets, beautiful little boy, walks over to him and starts to play with his glasses, then starts to play with his face. He's doing all this stuff, and then takes his face and kicks it into a smile, and he says, "There you are, Peter." And all the Lost Boys run around him. So now, back in my classroom, these people will walk down into the improv comedy bunker, as one of my students calls it, and they'll walk in, and it's like a library in there. All these people will walk in, they sit around the tables, they're checking out their phones, they're doing all this stuff to avoid looking at each other. The stage looms at the end of the hall there, at the end of the stage. The comedy, all these comedians, famous comedians are on the wall, and they're like, what the hell am I doing in this room? But then something interesting happens. After an awkward introduction, we get up in a big circle, and we start to do these silly improv games, warm-up exercises to get them in the moment. One of them is called sound and motion. I literally look at one of them, and I do a ridiculous sound and motion. I'll be like, "Baka!" And then their job is to be like, "Are you kidding me?" But they'll take it, and they're like, "Baka! Baka!" And "Baka! Baka!" is working its way around the whole circle. And quietly to myself, I'll look at these people, and I'll say to myself, "There you are, Peter." It's a gift to be able to see it, to watch it in those moments. And they embrace it, and they love it. And at the end of each one of the classes, I ask for two things. I ask, what's your takeaway from today? I also ask, what are you grateful for? And their takeaway is always something we worked on that day. The power of yes and, this idea of collaboration. I had no idea what I could discover. I'm always busy trying to be clever, invent something. Or maybe it's listening. It's like, man, I didn't realize I never listen. I'm always busy trying to come up with the next thing that I'm supposed to say. So I'm missing all this information. Or maybe it's specificity and how funny it is in comedy and how valuable it is in our own conversations. And when it gets to the gratitude moment with all of them, I hear a very similar theme, which I'm so grateful to hear. And it's this: man, I'm so grateful to have a room to play in, to laugh, to make stuff up. I had no idea that there were so many funny people in Washington, D.C., they'll say to each other. Again, all walks of life in this room. And it blows my mind. They walk in as strangers, they leave as friends. They're giving each other the greatest gift I think we can give each other, and that's trust. And it's just a beautiful thing to watch. On top of it, over the course of the 6 weeks they're with me, it starts to permeate, improvisation does, the rest of their worlds. They start to live into this uncertainty so they can find the certainty. They begin to let go of the control in their worlds, and they begin to let go of that control by trusting themselves. They'll come in and they'll say, Chris, you know what, I spoke up in a meeting today. I never speak up. And everybody was like, where'd that come from? Or they'll say, hey, I quit my job. I'm joining a new firm. I don't know what was holding me back, but I don't know. I'm just feeling different. I'm just going to take the class. Or, I took this class. I'm doing this. Or they'll say, hey, I asked that girl out. I was afraid to ask out. Or my favorite is, you know what? I used some of these principles of yes and listened, and I had one of the best conversations with my partner I've ever had. It's a beautiful thing to watch as it happens for them. And not only is improvisation hitting us and on our worlds, in their worlds, but it's something that's permeating the culture. Across America, you're seeing it. Just the other day, a story on NPR which talked about how they're using improvisation to work with autistic children, to help them in terms of spotting emotions. Medical schools such as as MIT and there it is, Northwestern, I had to find it. Northwestern and Stanford are using it to help doctors be better with patients, to communicate better, and to also work with worker burnout for themselves. Business schools such as Duke, MIT, and UCLA are also using it. Their students are using it in the classrooms to learn lateral thinking, to help them to realize there's not only one way, to get locked in on that one solution, but to open up to the possibilities that there are other solutions. And also, we're seeing it in business, of all places. Now, Google, we'd expect them to do it. They do everything. They improvise, and they come up with these games, and they do everything over ping pong and beer and create all these cool algorithms. But what about PepsiCo? McKinsey Consultants? Are you kidding me? These folks are using it to build collaboration, partnership, and creativity within their leadership. So when that wrench gets thrown in there, they're open to the possibilities. So whether it's professional or personal, improvisation is altering the way we think. I know it firsthand from myself because it took me a long time to walk into the improv room. What happened was, it took me 18 months. I walked in there about 15 years ago to do improv. And what I found was, it took me forever because I would walk by the room, I'd walk by the DC Improv and be like, not yet, not yet. My life's too messy, my life's too busy. I'm scared to death to walk in there. I would email Allison Jaffe, the principal, and say, I'm going to take the class. And then I would be like, no, I'm not ready. In a way, I wasn't because I was so locked into that control and being certain and owning that part of my world. You see, at that point in my life was a mess for myself in my mind. My boss had lost the election in 2000. I worked for Al Gore. And I'd worked so hard in that time period for the next year. I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what the hell I'm doing professionally. I'm not sure what to do next. On top of that, I'd been diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. And I was like, oh man, how do I deal with that? How do I get through that? On top of that, I'd been in a relationship with someone for almost 2 years. And that relationship ended. And then finally, The Rock, the guy who raised me, the guy who got me through it, when my dad left us, my grandfather, D. Auditory, passed away. If you were with me during that time, you would have watched me walking around the city quite often, not sure who I was, what I was doing, where I was going. There were even times I would sit sometime in Georgetown, down near the waterfront, and I would sit on a bench, and I would look up, and I would see the Key Bridge. And I would look at that bridge, and I would be like, I wonder if that bridge is high enough. It was a dark time. It's a terrible thing to be lost in your own head. A friend of mine always says, stay out of that neighborhood. It's dangerous. Sometimes you got to step out of the certainty to find, and live in the uncertainty to find that certainty. And so I took that leap into the improv class finally. And I took the class with a guy named Sean Westfall. And Sean is a great teacher here in the district, and something interesting started to happen to me. Just like I said to you, the ice started to fall off. I started to laugh again. I laughed so hard at one point, I'm like, oh my God, I know that laugh. Where's that laugh coming from? And it was just a real gift for me in that moment to be in that space, to let go. And I began to open up to the possibilities of my life. I began to let go of that worry and concern and just learn to jump in. You know, it's one of the best decisions I ever made, because in that place of making that decision, all the work I do today is based on it. My work as a body language expert, an improvisational actor, an improv comedian, and teacher, as well as a creativity consultant, all come from that decision, taking that leap. Now that I'm teaching, I get to hear it over and over again. I get to see it over and over again. And recently, I got a letter from one of my students. And I think it brings it all together, and I'd love to read it to you as we prepare to close here. And I have her permission to read it, by the way. Yeah, I made sure to get that before I did this. She writes to me, Chris, the beginning improv class was incredibly energetic, fun, accepting, playful, and inspiring. In all honesty, I was going through a very difficult time in my life last summer, around the time I took your class. The previous semester, I had felt nearly suicidal due to some unsafe situations. And home is not always the refuge I wished it to be. Life's better now. Our improv class and the people who played with me on that stage provided me with an oasis. I needed to be free and to express myself. Improv has had a profound positive impact on my life. The class encouraged me to believe in my abilities and my potential and to challenge myself to learn, to be present, to trust, and to play with abandon. There you are, Peter. You know? Improvisation offers us all that gift. It's where resiliency and creativity live. It's that opportunity to walk out of the certain into the uncertain to find that next step, that next path for you. So my ask for all of you in the time that we've shared here together is to simply ask yourselves, where's your playroom? Where's your next playroom? Where are you willing to open yourself up to find that space, to allow yourself to play, to live in some new creativity, to make those connections, to see where life may take you? Whether it's an improv class, a theater class, a jazz class, or woodworking, for all I care. My only hope and my prayer for you is that keep playing, keep improvising. Who knows? It may even save your life. That's this idea worth spreading. Thank you very much. Thanks.